March 16, 1943. The chill of early morning clung to the airfields near Hamburg, Germany. The wind whipped across the concrete runways, carrying the metallic tang of fuel and the faint, acrid smoke from last night's bombing raids. Engines idled, growling low and steady, while mechanics hurried across hangars, their boots clanging against steel floors, oil-stained hands adjusting bolts and rivets. A new day of aerial warfare was about to unfold, but few realized it would mark a turning point in the skies over Europe. In the shadows of these hangars, Germany's Luftwaffe pilots prepared for sorties, unaware that their technology, the very aircraft they trusted, was about to slip through enemy hands in a way that would reshape the war. Among them was Lieutenant Franz Stiegler, a young pilot with impeccable skill, the pride of his squadron. He tightened his flight gloves, the leather creaking under his fingers, and adjusted the cockpit controls of his WWII. Today's mission was routine reconnaissance over northern France. Routine, but danger was never far behind. The sky, cold and grey, seemed heavier than usual, as though it carried a secret only the wind knew. Across the English Channel, American intelligence analysts were already piecing together reports of a new German fighter plane, fast, agile, and unlike anything encountered before. Rumors swirled about prototypes that could outperform the P-40 War Hawks and Spitfires, aircraft that could potentially tilt the balance of power in the air. But without tangible evidence, the Allies had little to go on. The design, dubbed the FW-190 by its makers, remained Germany's guarded secret. Its radial engine roared like a predator's growl in the hangars, and its thick armor panels suggested a machine built for survival as much as speed. But would anyone outside Germany ever see it up close? At this moment, no one imagined just how close that day's flights would bring the Allies to the truth. Franz's mission began quietly, almost uneventfully. He lifted off, the vibration of the FW-190's engine resonating through the fuselage, each gear shift sending shivers up his arms. Below him, farmland stretched in endless patterns, the winter mud glistening under the grey sky. For the first 10 minutes, it was a routine flight, check instruments, maintain altitude, scan for enemy activity. Yet, in the back of his mind, Franz could feel the tension tightening like a wire. Every mission carried the possibility of ambush, and the knowledge of new Allied fighters in the area made even routine reconnaissance feel like threading a needle over a pit of vipers. Meanwhile, back at Hamburg, technicians at the aircraft manufacturing plants were finishing the final touches on a new batch of FWY-90s. Sheet metal hummed under rivets, oil soaked into the floors, and test pilots whispered warnings of minor engine quirks. These planes were revolutionary: a powerful BMW A101 radial engine, a wide fuselage for increased firepower, and a cockpit designed for superior visibility. The Germans believed they had produced a fighter capable of dominating the skies for years to come. But for all its sophistication, it was only as secure as the men flying it. And on that March morning, a chain of coincidences was about to expose it in a way no engineer or commander could have predicted. High above the French coastline, Franz and his squadron encountered a patch of low clouds. Visibility dropped, leaving only the grey horizon and the distant outline of enemy territory. As he navigated through the mist, Franz's mind wandered to the technical superiority of his plane. He felt a surge of pride, and yet a quiet apprehension. War had a habit of punishing even the most careful pilots. And then, just as the clouds began to part, he saw it. A small group of American bombers, far below, their silhouettes unmistakable against the pale morning sky. They were distant, unaware of the predator circling above. Franz's heart raced. Should he engage or merely observe? At that precise moment, an unexpected mechanical issue caused Franz to lose altitude slightly. The aircraft shuddered, and he instinctively corrected, pulling the throttle forward with a sharp yank. But the minor adjustment had a major consequence. One of the FW-190s veered closer than intended to the bomber formation. From below, American reconnaissance planes, trailing the bombers, caught a glimpse of something extraordinary: the sleek design, the radial engine, the gun placements. It was unlike any German plane they had encountered. Through binoculars and crude film cameras, they documented the aircraft, capturing the details that would soon revolutionize their understanding of Luftwaffe capabilities. Across the Atlantic, at the U.S. Army Air Force's Technical Intelligence Division, analysts pored over every photograph, every sketch. Reports trickled in. New enemy fighter observed. Superior engine performance. Armor plating noted. Immediate study recommended. For the first time, engineers and strategists could visualize the plane that had been a phantom menace in previous encounters. How fast was it? Could it outmaneuver the P-51 Mustang or the P-38 Lightning? These questions loomed large in the minds of men who understood that knowledge in warfare could tip the scales as much as bullets and bombs. Yet, despite this accidental exposure, Franz remained unaware of the impact of his flight. He returned to base, hands slick with sweat inside his gloves, adrenaline still pulsing through his veins. He recounted a routine reconnaissance, nothing more, nothing less. Meanwhile, thousands of miles away, American engineers began dissecting every detail gleaned from his flight, laying the groundwork for counter-strategies, aircraft modifications, and tactical adjustments. A simple mistake, a momentary lapse in judgment or mechanical quirk, had unwittingly handed the Allies a roadmap to Germany's aerial advantage. This wasn't the only instance where chance had altered the war. But the exposure of the FW-190 would resonate far beyond a single mission. It revealed vulnerabilities, sparked innovations, and set the stage for a silent battle of engineering brilliance that would determine the skies over Europe. The very machine designed to intimidate and dominate had inadvertently become the blueprint for its own nemesis. As the sun climbed higher, the faint smell of kerosene still hung in the air, mingling with the metallic scent of aircraft panels. Pilots like Franz prepared for the next sortie, unaware of the invisible ripple their actions were sending across the Atlantic. Somewhere, Allied technicians examined sketches, photographs, and notes, piecing together the secrets of Germany's fighter designs. And, in the quiet tension of those early hours, the course of aerial warfare was quietly, irreversibly shifting. The story of the FW-190 and the accidental exposure by a German pilot is not just one of machines and technology. It's a story of human error and ingenuity, of courage and vulnerability, of moments where a single decision, or a single mechanical twitch, can change the destiny of nations. What followed from this inadvertent revelation would challenge engineers, pilots, and strategists on both sides in ways they could never have imagined. By mid-March 1943, the photographs and sketches of the FW-190 had reached the Technical Intelligence Division at Wright Field, Ohio. The air smelled faintly of machine oil and ink as analysts leaned over enlargements of grainy images, their magnifying glasses tracing every line of the aircraft's fuselage. This was more than just a new fighter. It was a puzzle, a machine that could redefine the balance in the skies over Europe. The FW-190's radial engine, cockpit design, armament layout, and streamlined profile were unlike any plane American engineers had fully studied before. Every detail mattered. How could a single pilot's routine reconnaissance inadvertently hand the Allies such a treasure? At the drafting tables, engineers began comparing the FW-190 to the P-40s and Spitfires American pilots had flown against. They noted its shorter nose, which improved pilot visibility, its wide wings that allowed heavier fire power, and its radial engine, which promised resilience under combat damage. Each sketch, each diagram, revealed capabilities that had been whispered about in combat reports, but never verified speeds exceeding 400 miles per hour at medium altitude, tight turning radius, and armor protection that could shrug off hits that would destroy earlier German fighters. The FW-190 was not just a plane, it was a revelation, and it had arrived without the Germans realizing it had been photographed. Meanwhile, in the European skies, Franz Stigler continued his patrols. He had no idea that his plane's silhouette had become the blueprint for the Allies' next steps. He adjusted his throttle, feeling the vibration of the FW-190 resonate through the fuselage, a sensation he had grown accustomed to, yet one that American analysts were dissecting with awe and precision thousands of miles away. Each gear shift, each engine note, was being catalogued and studied, forming a technical dossier that would guide fighter development for months to come. In laboratories and wind tunnels across the US, engineers began constructing replicas and test models. Scale models were mounted and tested for aerodynamics, engines dissected for performance benchmarks, and simulated combat scenarios evaluated against existing American fighters. Every observation brought the FW-190 closer to reality in Allied minds. How had the Luftwaffe designed something so fast and yet so durable? How could they counter it? The questions drove innovation. Soon, pilots were briefed with diagrams of enemy tactics, and modifications were planned for American aircraft that would allow them to meet the FW-190 on equal or superior terms. At the same time, Allied intelligence combed through Luftwaffe pilot reports, bomber debriefings, and intercepted radio communications. Franz's flight had inadvertently validated rumors and filled gaps that had previously been mere conjecture. Engineers realized that understanding the FW-190 wasn't just about duplicating its speed or firepower. It was about predicting German strategy, anticipating where and how these fighters would be deployed, and preparing American squadrons to survive and succeed in the skies. Every detail mattered: armor thickness, wing design, gun placement. Each variable could mean the difference between life and death for a bomber crew. The impact was immediate. Within weeks, American aircraft design teams were able to refine the P-51 Mustang's performance, improve engine cooling, and adjust wing aerodynamics, all based on observations from the FW-190. Fighter squadrons received new tactical manuals detailing how to engage the FW-190 effectively, emphasizing altitude advantage and teamwork in formations. Every move the Allies made traced back to the accidental exposure of the FW-190, the unseen ripple caused by Franz's routine mission. But it wasn't just technology that was influenced. Morale and psychology played a key role. American pilots who had feared the mysterious new German fighter now had detailed intelligence. Seeing diagrams of the plane, understanding its strengths and weaknesses, allowed them to confront it with confidence rather than fear, and that psychological edge, as much as technical superiority, shaped outcomes in subsequent battles. How does knowing the enemy intimately alter the courage of a pilot in combat? This question lingered over every briefing room, every flight preparation. In Europe, Luftwaffe pilots continued to fly FW-190s, believing their aircraft's design to be a well-guarded secret. They boasted about the plane's superiority in reports, unaware that the Allies could now anticipate their tactics. Franz himself continued his patrols with a sense of routine. Yet the FW-190's exposure would quietly begin to influence combat outcomes. In dogfights over France and later Germany, Allied pilots adjusted attack angles, matched speeds, and coordinated formations based on intelligence derived from what had been considered a routine reconnaissance. The FW-190, feared and respected by the Luftwaffe, had unknowingly become a targetable, studied adversary. There were moments of dramatic irony. A young American pilot climbing to intercept FW-190 may have flown over the same fields Franz had once patrolled. He followed procedures derived from diagrams and photographs of the plane Franz had unknowingly revealed. Every evasive maneuver, every calculated engagement reflected a chain reaction triggered by a German pilot unaware of the extraordinary consequences of his flight, and every successful interception reinforced the idea that information, accurate, timely, detailed, could be as lethal as any cannon or machine gun. Technical curiosity merged with battlefield necessity. Aircraft designers pushed forward with innovations, stronger engines, lighter alloys, improved propeller designs. Wind tunnels tested new wing configurations. Tactics manuals instructed pilots to exploit the FW-190's tendencies. It was slower in dives, less agile at high altitudes, vulnerable to coordinated attacks. These insights transformed American air power in Europe. Within months, the balance of aerial engagements began to shift. The once mysterious FW-190 was now a known quantity, a foe whose strengths and weaknesses had been meticulously catalogued. Even in the quiet halls of intelligence offices, analysts reflected on the extraordinary nature of this chain of events. A single pilot, performing what he thought was a routine reconnaissance mission, had provided the Allies with knowledge that would accelerate aircraft development, refine tactics, and ultimately save countless lives. Chance, error, and meticulous observation had combined to alter the course of the air war. And yet, the FW-190 continued to fly over Europe, a symbol of German ingenuity, unmatched in power and elegance, yet now countered by the invisible hand of intelligence. The story of its exposure reminds us that war is not only fought with bullets and bombs, but also with information, observation, and human error. Each photograph, each sketch, each careful measurement contributed to an unfolding narrative that few could have predicted at the time. A narrative that would culminate in decisive engagements, technological leaps, and the subtle triumphs that shape history long before the battles themselves. By the summer of 1943, the FW-190 was no longer a phantom in the skies for American pilots. They knew it, studied it, anticipated it. Yet in Europe, Luftwaffe pilots still trusted their aircraft, implicitly unaware that the Allies had cracked the code of their seemingly invincible machine. The intelligence derived from Franz Stiegler's accidental reconnaissance had transformed American tactics. Dogfights were no longer a chaotic test of reflexes. They were a calculated chess game in the air, with pilots exploiting every weakness documented from the FW-190's design. On a crisp morning over the forests of northern France, a formation of P-51 Mustangs climbed silently, engines humming in synchronized precision. Their pilots carried in their minds the careful studies of the FW-190, the angles of attack, the vulnerabilities in its armor, the limits of its maneuverability at high altitude. As they spotted a group of German fighters below, the tension spiked. Each pilot gripped the controls, muscles taut, senses sharpened. This was the moment where knowledge met action, where intelligence became lethal. Franz Stiegler, still flying his FW-190s, had no idea how history was turning around him. On the other side, American pilots dived and climbed with precision born of countless hours of study, turning what had been fear into opportunity. A single engagement could now be won not by superior courage alone, but by superior preparation. Pilots called out maneuvers, avoided the most dangerous gun placements, and executed attacks that exploited weaknesses once invisible. In the chaos of battle, the FW-190, feared and respected, was now a plane that could be neutralized with skill and insight. Meanwhile, engineers in wind tunnels continued their experiments, refining tactics for the air war. Flight simulators, sketches, and live exercises mirrored the exact capabilities of the FW-190. Each encounter reinforced lessons learned from Franz's inadvertent revelation. The Allies' advantage was no longer theoretical, it was real, measurable, and devastatingly effective. In engagements that followed, the success rate of American pilots against FW-190s increased dramatically. Missions that once seemed suicidal were now survivable. And yet, the Luftwaffe, remained largely unaware of the invisible shift in the skies, trusting their design and underestimating the unseen hand guiding their adversaries. It was a subtle revolution. Each FW-190 intercepted, each bomber protected, was a testament to the power of observation, intelligence, and human error. The ripple effect of one pilot's routine flight spread far beyond what Franz, or anyone else at the time, could have imagined. Engineers celebrated, pilots gained confidence, and tactical manuals were updated in real time, allowing the Allies to press their advantage further with every sortie. The war in the air was no longer purely a contest of firepower. It was a battle of knowledge. Somewhere over the Ardennes, during another tense encounter, an American pilot dove on a FW-190, recalling the diagrams he had studied months earlier. He pulled back just as the enemy tried to counter, exploiting a flaw in its wing design. The German pilot, experienced yet unaware of the intelligence guiding his opponent, barely had time to react. Moments like these, repeated across countless engagements, slowly but inexorably shifted the balance of power in the European theatre. What had begun as a single accidental exposure had transformed into a chain of victories, each small yet cumulatively decisive. Back at American bases, analysts reflected on the extraordinary nature of what had been achieved. One pilot's flight, one camera, one set of photographs had provided the Allies with a blueprint for success. It wasn't just about the FW-190. It was about the understanding that war could be won in unexpected ways. Strategy and foresight, meticulous observation, and a touch of luck had combined to produce results that no amount of firepower alone could guarantee. Franz Stigler's story, when told after the war, became legendary not because of his error, but because of the lessons it embodied. A single human action, however mundane it seemed at the time, had altered the trajectory of a conflict. The FW-190, which had once seemed untouchable, had become both a symbol of German ingenuity and a reminder of how fragile advantage can be when knowledge is incomplete. The war continued, the battles raged, and countless lives were saved because the Allies could prepare for the enemy with unprecedented detail. The skies over Europe became a testament to preparation, intelligence, and adaptation. In the quiet hours after missions, engineers continued refining aircraft, pilots shared observations, and the lessons of the FW-190 exposure continued to ripple outward, shaping engagements in ways that would influence the outcome of the war. Reflecting on this today, we see that the story of the FW-190 is not only a story of machines and tactics. It is a story of human curiosity, error, and ingenuity. It shows how a single act, even accidental, can reverberate through history, influencing technology, strategy, and human lives. It reminds us that innovation and insight often come from the most unexpected places, and that the balance of power can hinge on knowledge just as much as it does on firepower. As we study these events now, we are left with a profound understanding. Wars are not only won by strength, but by intelligence, observation, and the willingness to learn from every moment, even from mistakes. Franz Stigler's routine flight, the FW-190, it revealed, and the countless decisions that followed underscore a timeless lesson in war, as in life. The smallest actions can carry consequences that echo across generations. And as you watch the story unfold in archives, photographs, and the echoes of engines long silenced, consider this: every innovation has a story, every victory a hidden chain of decisions, and every pilot, engineer, and observer a role in shaping history. What would have happened if one flight had been different? One photograph never taken? One detail overlooked? The answer lies in the skies above Europe, forever changed by the accidental exposure of the FW-190.